I'm hitting record on this tonight in hopes that I can come up with something that might be of value to somebody, since here in America everything has to have a value, right? Usually monetarily. So I'm sure that people will go through this and try to find some way to, gank some pieces out of it to put together with other things so they can make a lot of money on it. That said, may it be that I meet your expectations here in the land of Mammon. Now, if I sound irritated and irritable, that's because I am. Contrary to normal protocol in the halls of Synthetica, otherwise known as the United States federal government, and corporate America, and religious America, and secular America, and the list goes on, I'm not going to paint on a happy face for you just for your own benefit. I'm going to keep it real. And if that is a problem for some of you, well, go take a Valium, have a shot of whiskey, and go your own way. This is probably going to be too much to handle for you. Whatever it is that's going to come out. But I'd like to just tell you where I'm at tonight. And I'm going to start by giving you a little story of something that happened to me yesterday. Actually, Sunday. I was sitting outside and a homeless couple came up. I didn't think they were homeless. They didn't look homeless to me in terms of what I normally deal with the homeless folks in the neighborhood. And we sat and had a great conversation. It was also a very hard conversation because they had lost their home, lost their possessions, and COVID had essentially annihilated their opportunities. And here in the state of Virginia, which is a commonwealth, which means basically that everybody that's a commoner gets their wealth yanked from them, and the state doesn't do anything for them but that which they can make money on. Didn't have any services for them. There's no services, right? So let us just be perfectly, I'm going to use that as a starting point. We'll see where it goes. Now, they were educated. And most people that are still doing pretty good and have a job of some sort can't comprehend the fact that how could anybody wind up on the streets? Well, some of you are going to find that out the hard way at the top in a lot of different ways, because the way the country's going, there's some deep lessons that some of you in decision-making positions are going to have to learn the hard way. And that means that you're probably going to have to be stripped of everything you have to learn some humility and learn the consequences of how your choices, your decisions impact the lives of other people. Now, some of you may mock at that. You may think that's funny, or you may think I'm being, dramatic or whatever. Well, that's part of the problem in America, too. You're a complacent, complicit, corrupt, rebellious, whorish society. You've turned into everything I actually despise. I fucking hate it. Yeah. Does that word have is that a problem for you that I use that word? Because if it is, you should probably get off this and not listen to it as well, because you're probably part of the problems that I'm talking about. Because if you can't handle the common vernacular of the people, that means you're an elitist and an arrogant whitewashed tomb. And I don't really have time to deal with corpses that are still walking around right now. So you can just turn this off and go, pretend, that that you're righteous enough to look down on everybody else. But that shit doesn't work with me anymore. Now you can say that I shouldn't use that language because it doesn't bode well from, revealing my IQ. Well, first off, I don't have to impress you or anybody else with my IQ. I am more than confident in what my capabilities are and what God has gifted me with in terms of talent, skills, intellect, and otherwise, that what you think of me is irrelevant. Basically, I really don't give a damn about your rules. So, I'll give you just a moment and you can sign off and, go find somewhere else to salve your seared consciences. But for the rest of you, I want you to consider some of the things that I'm saying and why I am saying them the way that I am. And I want you to consider why it is some people get so offended by it. Because most of the time, the people that are offended by me are really just revealing more about themselves than anything I've ever done. And I find that incredibly interesting to me because I no longer let them project their own inner darkness, arrogance, avarice, hubris, and stupidity upon me. I look at them as imbeciles. It saddens me they're that way. But I still look at them that way because that's what they are, regardless of what they hide behind in worldly terms, regardless of how many degrees they may have, how many letters behind their name or in front of it, whatever title that they have. It's irrelevant to me. I walk on level ground. And so should you. Especially in our times with what those who have the most wealth, power, influence, right? Because the fruit is on the tree of what their time in power has brought about. I wouldn't even make a pie for a dog because of the fruit being so bitter and lacking any substance or nourishment out of those kinds of people. I disdain them. I disdain them because of what they're responsible for. I don't hate them as individual human beings. I despise what they've done, and I cannot stand that they're continuing to do it, and how it's impacting the average people in this country who work hard and never ever get an opportunity. You have inverted this country to the point where, quite honestly, I despise what it is. I do. I'm not going to sit here and tell you anything different to make you feel better or to ingratiate you to me or vice versa. There are some things you can't hide, and what you can't hide is the outcomes of how you live your lives and the impacts thereof in the cascade effects. I don't know if you've ever heard about this. I mean, some of you have, I'm sure. In corporate America and in government, right? We're talking about decision trees, command structure, right? Chain of command, right? Well, it's not the only thing that has trees. All trees have roots, and I look at what the roots are. And I can tell what the roots are by what the fruit is on the tree. It tells me a lot about the kind of tree. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, tells me who and what they really serve. It tells me what they're really hiding and they just revealed. It tells me a great deal more about them and their reactions to me and others, or their lack of reactions to me and others, than if I'd put them to a polygraph, sat them in a room full of analysts, behavior specialists, and psychiatrists and psychologists. See, what you don't understand is your society has become so mechanized in thought, so rigid and closed-minded, and so wedded to your bureaucracies that you're becoming less human and more machine-like. How's that working for you? About as well as your so-called free market system, right? Because the free market system was supposed to save everybody by how it's able to adapt to fix things. How well did it do leading up to the crisis the last 36 months? How well has it done during the crisis over the last 36 months? Because the last 36 months is the fruit of the previous time before it. That's the roots of that tree. And I can tell you, it's failed. It's more an invasive species than it is a fruit-bearing garden variety fruit-bearing tree. So when I hear everybody talk about their various perspectives on economics, it tells me a great deal about what they really serve, what they really think about stuff, and how little they actually know about it beyond the mechanics of which they use it for and the intent at which they use it. So when I hear somebody talk to me about free market economy, right, and market forces, and they don't comprehend the cascade effects of their choices and what the free market system has done, I don't see them any differently than I see the secularist socialist or communist or anarchist. I see them on equal footing as imbeciles, as blind fools who do not understand just how naked they are in the actual light of things. Nor do they understand that what they're espousing is utter bullshit. A great example, right, of market forces were presented to you last year when market forces kept you from getting the necessary goods and services that you needed, and revealed to you that your free market system isn't free at all. It has a great cost, particularly when your leadership in the public and private sector, top to bottom, right, has made merchandise out of you and hoard you out to a hostile power. There are consequences for things. And when you come down to it, in the end, it always comes out. Now, you may think because you control news services and information that you can whitewash that over and hide it and fig leaf yourself, but you can't. The fruit is on that tree, and it's rotten. And that tree has very shallow roots. In fact, those roots are pride, greed, avarice, and hubris. Lust for power, lust for control, and a desire to whitewash it over and hide what it is that you got your asses busted by. Because you know as well as I do that if the rest of the country ever really figures it out, they're going to come after you with more than just pitchforks. Because they will have figured out what you've been doing to them and how you've been lying to them and how your entire narrative is bullshit. That means you've broken trust. Most of them don't believe in you at all anyway. That poses a significant problem for you because your system's not only broken, it's ineffectual. The consequences of your decisions and your choices, right, your policies, have borne the fruit of their kind. And it's not good. In fact, it's poison. It's dead. It's deadly. It's created death. That's one hell of a legacy. But yet, you think that you can get away with continuing to whitewash things over and lie to people and there won't be any consequences, right? Well, that's where you're wrong this time. Because this time you're caught in your own trap. And the clock is ticking down to the last moment for you to actually accept responsibility for it and become a part of the solution by humbling yourself, or remain a part of the problem and become fertilizer for the next 100 years of this country. Do you understand what I'm telling you? I told you, I'm rather irritable tonight. I'm frustrated. And I'd like the boomer generation leadership to explain to me, how is it that you thought that you could go your whole lives and never be called out on anything, especially once you got into power? Because you have been in power during this time. You were supposed to be good stewards of this country. You are now responsible for all of it. Now, how does that sound? Now, you want me to detail what that entails? What the charges are? Probably not, huh? Now, I'm not blaming everybody in a generation. That would be foolish, and I'm not blaming everybody in leadership throughout an entire generation. But those who I am calling out know exactly who they are. How does it feel to know that you are no different than what your parents fought in World War II to defeat so that you could live in liberty and freedom, and then you turn out to do as bad or worse than what they had to defeat, but in a much more clever way because you chased your god of mammon and your atheism and your idols of science, thereby corrupting it. Don't talk to me about science. I have always had a great love for science, but it's also been in the context that it was intended to be. Science has never been a religion to me. I don't put my faith in the works and wisdom of human beings. I found throughout my entire life too many gaps, too many failures, and too much wrong information and false information among your ranks. So when I see somebody like Dr. Fauci get up, and instead of being humble before everybody, he cops an attitude, that infuriates me. That shows me, one, he's corrupt. Two, he's arrogant. Three, he's an imbecile. He's incompetent, and he needs to be removed. And those of you that want to keep him there as one of your meat puppets to spew out your fake narratives and to cover your asses, well, your days are numbered. Yes, that's a warning. Now, you want to call that a threat? Well, go call it whatever you want. You won't listen to either one until it actually happens to you. Or you'll coil up like the snakes that many of you are, and you'll try to strike, right? Try to preempt it. And then you'll really expose what you are. And then all the justification that's needed for removing you, you'll have provided by your own choices, your own actions, your own decisions, and your own behaviors. Because that's the nature of a snake. That also says who you're in bed with. You all share the same nature, do you not? And that's why in the end you'll all go and pay the same consequences in the same place. So when I tell you that I'm frustrated, what am I really frustrated about? I'm frustrated with the fact that your country and its problems are as much due to your own pride and arrogance and your refusal to listen as it is anything your enemies have done. They'll just finish you off. And you're making that easy. What bothers me is that you seem to think that you can get away with it, and you've seemed to convince most of America this is the way it is. So what's going to happen for them to actually have that broken in them is you're going to have to be broken and crushed and exposed and pay the consequences so that they can understand that they have been lied to and brainwashed by you idiots. You corrupt motherfuckers. Oh, there I go. I'm not being a good Christian, am I? I'm not being a good boy. I'm not playing by your rules. Your rules are lawlessness, pretending to be regulations. I don't play that game anymore. Mainly because I really don't care about your system as it is. I don't care about your games, your positions. What I care about is the American people and the fact that they have such poor leadership, such corrupt leadership, and they're paying the price for it. And the fact that you made decisions that made it highly probable and even likely for them to actually become addicts and imbeciles like you by how you've corrupted everything. You know, I did a podcast a while ago, last year, in the middle of all this, and it basically called this country the land of confusion. And when I came up with the idea to do that and to have that little talk from the farm down in Georgia, it was after listening to Fauci and his medical folks pawn off utter bullshit that I knew to be a lie and call it science. That is the epitome of arrogance, and it's just a small example of how you're permeated, you're poisoned by, you're riddled with the yeast of confusion and arrogance. And all of that is wrapped up in corruption. So when we look at where the country's at and where we're heading, it's off the side of a cliff. Now, the real America, right? What's left of it, the remnant of it, is still underneath all this mess, and they're suffering. That's who I care about. The rest of you fools, I don't care whether you live or die, quite honestly. Because you've impacted my family, my friends, right? My fellow citizens, and the rest of the nations on earth, and treated everybody as if we're a bunch of dumb animals, when what you are is a condemned beast. You're not the beast of beasts, but you're one of the beasts that's going to burn because of what you've done. You share the same nature. That is your predicament. Now, if that sounds harsh, or it offends you, well, maybe you ought to stop and think about how much we're angry and frustrated and offended by you and your choices and your decisions. And you know why pride comes before the fall? You know what the point of it is? Because once you hit the dirt, on the way down, you get to see everything that you caused when you were in a position of power over people. And it is revealed to you in stark terms, right to the point where you hit the dust of the ground. And that entire journey down to the ground in your fall is an opportunity to be humbled. And as I say, what's coming, everybody will be either humbled and raised up, or humiliated and torn down to the ground, never to rise again. This country has always been willing to give grace to people to some degree. But over the course of the 51 years of my life, I've watched it become a cold-hearted bitch, a corrupted whore, a morally and ethically degenerated society on the order of, well, I mean, you make Sodom and Gomorrah look good. You have monetized your foolishness down to the to levels that have never been seen in human history. You have taken the most blessed nation on earth and ruined it, all in one generation. You have ruined those in your own generation that worked hard, fought for this country. You see, what I finally realized is what a mirage all this is, what a sham it really is. It sounds good. The ideals are great. But mostly what you have to do to keep that up is a very expensive series of recoding yourselves with whitewash so that people keep believing it. Well, now they don't believe it. And they don't believe it on either side of the political spectrum. Now, those of you that worship at the the ground that Trump walks on, I've got a lot of things to say to you. And I'm going to do that in a separate podcast. But don't think I'm going to let you off because I hit the left. I can't stand either side. Now, I love people, and I'm quick to give grace to others. But I can tell you what, you're just as much an idolater on the right as you are as the ones you point out on the left. So don't even get me started there. For those of you that want to discuss actual topics going on, let's discuss the drought that is ongoing in the West. That also upset me and frustrated me today. Nearly every single major problem that you have right now, over the course of anywhere from a couple of years to 20 years before it happened, I had gamed it out. It came up, spent time, right, to come up with solutions to be prepared. Not a single one would you do. Not a single one would you do correct, even if you did try. And some of you did try on some things in terms of DC, right? You still screwed it up because it's really all about you, isn't it? It's not about the American people. It's not about what's best for the country. It's not even about what's best for God. It's what makes you look good, whether you're religious or secular. It's all about you. It's all about your power, your position, your reputation, right? Your wealth and your influence. That's not leadership, and that is not even authentic. What that is you chasing the dragon and your own shadow towards the dust of the ground, where you will eventually, your body, your container, will be laid, and you'll leave everything that you work so hard for behind for everybody to fight over. Now that is a futilitude if I've ever heard of one. And it's futility for good reason. So people tell me what I need to do, right? To be a part of a system I despise. No, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to be a part of continuing to perpetuate something that's not only broken, but's corrupted. You can meet me on my ground now. Because I'm going to sit here and watch all this fall into the dirt across all the buckets of your society until you let go or you're no longer in the way because you're no longer here. Now, if that sounds arrogant to you, well, many of you would actually know that because if there's one thing we're good at in America is being arrogant pricks. But I assure you, I am confident, even in my positive, about your negatives. I know your history. I know the outcomes of every choice that your policies in D.C. have birthed. The question you may want to ask is, how do I know that and why? How do I know what I know and why? That might be a very good starting point for you. Because I don't have a wall of degrees. I don't need a wall of degrees. That's stuff that your world and you do. I don't come from a moneyed family and your ruling caste. So how do I know what I know? And how is it I can apply what I know to offer solutions and or expose the problems? Well, even if I told you, you wouldn't believe me. So I'm not even going to go there with you. But what I will tell you is that the trajectory this country has been on for a long time is heading towards a train wreck. A moment in time and space where the structural integrity of the country will not hold. And you can continue to deny that, and you can continue to do it your way, and continue to play the old playbooks over and over and over, expecting a different result, but it will not suffice to get you out of your predicament. You will pay the consequences. Now, I could sit here and I could talk about all kinds of solutions, right? Because people ask me about solutions all the time. One, because they don't have any themselves, or they're trying to find more of them so they can make money on them, because that's what they do for a living, right? They don't want to ask me if they could pay me for it. What they want to do is they want me to give it to them for free. You see, everything is a gatekeeper here. The beast that you religious folks keep looking for, you became. On both sides of the aisle. What you think is coming is already here. You're living in the middle of it. By the time you figure out what you're in, it will probably be too late for you, because the real fireworks will be starting. And I pity you for what you'll have to go through. But it will be just that you go through it. That's what I mean. You live in a land of confusion. It doesn't matter where I look. I find it everywhere. So anyway, I think that might do it for the night, because the longer I speak tonight, the more I'm probably just going to get more and more embittered and frustrated. But I really don't have much to offer you. I don't know what else I can offer people that refuse to listen, and what they do take, they misappropriate, misapply it, and mislead others with it. I mean, why should I give you any solutions? Why should I fund you with my ideas, with my solutions and concepts and ideas on things? I shouldn't, and I'm not going to anymore. I really have nothing more to say to you as a nation, because you won't do what you need to do. So there's no real point for me to sit here and go on about what can be done. But I can tell you this: your greatest solutioneers are not in D.C., or even working for the government, or in many cases not even in a position where they can actually use it. So you think about that when the next wave of your consequences start to hit you like a hammer in the head. And know that those are the very people you've alienated, mitigated, and pissed on all over this country on both sides of the aisle. As it is for people so too it is for nations.